iDecide's a platform where you can plan, store and share your end-of-life documents. And when we talk about end-of-life documents, we mean things like your wills, your advanced care directives, powers of attorney, organ donation, that sort of thing. It's been created so that people can store their documents and tell their trusted advisors or loved ones where they've put that special and important information so it can be found and used when it matters most. I think it comes from my lived experience. Over a period of 10 years, I lost my mum, my nan, and my young husband to cancer. And each one of those end-of-life journeys were really, really different. With mum, she got leukemia and passed away within a 6-week period, so it was quite a shock. And we even had to make consideration about turning off her life support. Nan was in a palliative care environment, and Alistair was diagnosed with colon cancer at the age of 36 and he passed at the age of 39. But because we had time to plan, it was a very different ending. So iDecide came out of those experiences, that lived experience of that end-of-life journey. Essentially what I wanted to do was make it an easier time for people who had gone through something similar to what I was going through. And the whole idea around having a place to plan, store and share your information is one way that you can take that stress out of the end-of-life experience and allow your family and loved ones to move through that grieving process in an easier manner. So I think, it's absolutely talking about end of life and your death and your own mortality is just one of the hardest things that you can do. It's interesting though, because many other cultures across the world actually celebrate death. And so, for example, in Latin America, they have the Day of the Dead where they celebrate their loved ones and they leave gifts and they have great celebrations and sing and have, parades and that sort of stuff. But in Australia, it's still very much a taboo. So it is hard. But one of the ways to start that conversation is literally a platform like iDecide, where you can take your loved ones to the platform and start looking through some of the resources and education that we have there. We've also been really fortunate to partner with a charity partner, being the Cancer Council, and so we're going to be able to bring forward a lot of resources moving forward with the build of iDecide, where we will be able to support people through those journeys, more comprehensively. Don't be afraid, be prepared and not scared. And so that comes from that experience with Alistair. Once we realised that he'd had a really difficult diagnosis and we knew that he was not going to have the ending that we wished for, which was cure, obviously, we decided ourselves, and that's where the name iDecide came from. Alistair used to say to me, I decide what happens and I decide how I'm going to manage my end of life, Rechelle. So what happened there was we actually had the conversation and we were able to talk about how we're going to talk to our children about the fact that he was going to pass away and what we needed to do to make it easier for me once the inevitable was going to happen. Yeah, so Alistair was a massive fan of Doctor Who. So we have a bit of a Doctor Who marathon. Usually on his birthday we will do that. And we also love to make a cake because Alistair had a massive sweet tooth and he loved caramel. So we'll often make a caramel mud cake and celebrate the fact that that was his birthday. On the actual day of his death, we do recognise it. For the kids then, that's a bit sadder. So they often like to look at pictures and videos and things that we have of him. But we usually end up with cake as well. It's pretty much all about the cake. The videos are really important, especially for my two, because when Alistair was diagnosed, they were 2 and 4 years old, and when he passed away, they were 4 and 6 years old. So the videos and the photos are just really important milestones for them as well, to see their dad and to remember things that they did with him. So, the fact that we have the technology we have today, we were very fortunate to be able to use that to memorialise Alistair. I think that I just want to start the conversation around death. Certainly, part of what we've been doing with iDecide is we've created a YouTube channel, and we've also been recording podcasts where we're talking to people about their end of life experiences within their own environment. And what I found is that people are really connecting with those real, true to life stories. So part of iDecide is about starting the conversation and getting people to actually not see it as a stigma or as a taboo or something that you shouldn't talk about, but something that if you plan ahead can actually then be put aside and you can continue on living, perfectly normal life, knowing that you've organised yourself. I think one of the most interesting things is when I set out to start the I Decided podcast, I didn't have a plan to talk to just women. I put out a call out across lots of social media asking people who wanted to come and talk to me, and it was all women who came to talk to me. And it kind of, in a way, proved what I'd been doing in my research with iDecide through my customer research initially, and that was that women are life managers. We seem to be the people who manage lives across a range of different life stages. So whether we're looking after our kids or we're looking after our own family or we're looking after our aging parents, usually this kind of responsibility seems to fall to women. And so part of what I'm seeing with iDecide is it's definitely going to be a mechanism for helping women to plan, store and share information for not only themselves but also for their families to make things easier when inevitably it seems that they're the ones who are managing those issues. We'll make it easier by enabling them to upload documentation. So we have checklists within the platform which kind of guide you. It's almost like a roadmap through the kinds of things that you should ensure that you upload into the platform. And then you can also do awesome stuff like make a video. You can also upload photos, so special photos of moments that you might like to have there for when your end of life comes, your family can see them. You can also write a letter. And the other thing that the platform allows you to do is once you've uploaded all of that information, you can then nominate a trusted advisor. So that would normally be family members, obviously, but also it can be your accountant or your lawyer or that sort of thing, because there are going to be multiple people who need to know where your documentation is once you've passed. Oh, well, that's a story and a half. I ended up here because of my experience with death, obviously, to build iDecide. But prior to that, I'd had 20 odd years down in Canberra working in government. And before Alistair became sick, we'd actually bought a pub. So I grew up in the pub industry. So I've had a really diverse career and background and experiences. And I think that's maybe where I guess that level of resilience that I have, I like to think that I'm resilient and I'm trying to instill that in my little boys as well. And I think that's where it comes from, is having had this really diverse kind of career and background. But once Alistair became ill, we sold the hotel and came back to the beautiful New England, and this is where I wanted to raise the kids. And so, yeah, it sort of was the right time for me to start thinking about what I wanted to do. And I have another business, a consultancy called Regional Collab that I work on, and that pays the bills. And iDecide was something that I started building literally as that passion piece. And because I saw it, I saw the problem and felt that there was a solution that I could offer for people. So that's something that I'm really passionate about. I currently do some work facilitating some women founder kind of incubator courses and basically helping women to build their ideas from idea through to MVP. And one of the big issues we have, and it's not just in Triple R Australia, it's literally across Australia, we're still only getting about 2.3 to 3% of VC funding to women, which is absolutely appalling. In conversations I've had recently with women who are women founders, and I do some mentoring through a couple of different avenues as well. I've been talking to them, and they have said that one of the big issues when they go to a VC and they pitch for funding is that they're looking at a whole panel of men, and a lot of the women have products or services that are specifically useful for women, but yet they're pitching to men who don't necessarily understand the innate need that is within that product or service. And so that's one of the things that I'm passionate about changing. We just need more women in that space, in that entrepreneurial space, in that venture capital, angel investment, seed investment space. I just want them to start the conversation, and I want that there's 52% of Australians who don't have a will, and I want them to think about having those documents in place for their loved ones, because the stress that comes from not having this stuff organised when someone passes away is just so very difficult. And if you just take a few really simple steps and use something like iDecide, it's going to make it so much easier for people when you come to that particular stage of life. So we've been really fortunate in the first season of the podcast to talk to a whole range of amazing people about their end of life journeys and experiences. So we've had everyone from someone who is a living organ donor receiver to someone who lost their mum just before she had her wedding, like literally a week before her wedding. We've talked to people who've lost children. We've talked to people who've lost parents and people who've lost other close relatives as well. What the themes that have come through on the podcast are around that universal nature of what grief is and how difficult it is, and how pretty much all of them wished that there was some kind of plan in place for their loved one if there wasn't something there. In the podcast, we obviously talk about some really heavy and difficult subject matter. And so I like to flip it a bit, and we do have a bit of a sense of humour at iDecide. I like to say that talking about pregnancy doesn't make you pregnant, and talking about death doesn't make you dead. So one of the things that we do in the podcast is ask a few cheeky questions, and one of those is around the bedside table buddy. Do you have something that's a bit naughty in your bedside table that maybe you don't want your kids to see? And it was really interesting. Some of the women were like, oh my God, I had never thought of that. And others were like, absolutely, I've got like a list of 5 people. If one can't do it, the next one will turn up. So yeah, the bedside table buddy is all about someone going in and kind of clearing out the clutter that you might not want others to see. Well, I always joke with my boys that the way it should happen is we should just start playing American Pie, because it's like the longest song in the world, right? And literally we start playing it, walk in, do the stuff, la-di-da, still running, we get out, we're all done and dusted in, 7 or 8 minutes, or however long that particular song goes for, and they think that's quite hilarious. So yeah, some of the other Spotify songs that the women talked about to me was, someone said they wanted to be taken out to Dancing Queen, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And some people were very adamant that they wanted to make people cry. So there's definitely going to be some Wind Beneath My Wings or something along those lines. So yeah, it's an interesting thing asking people about what songs they think they'd like at their funeral. They should definitely go to www.idecide.co, log on and have a bit of a poke around. Absolutely subscribe to our newsletter. So we have an email capture there. You can go and whack your email in, and we'll start talking to you on a regular basis about all the exciting stuff that we're doing at iDecide. But, at the end of the day, if you like the platform, jump in. It's $99 for a year's subscription to plan, store and share your documentation in the platform, and start using it. We're there for support at any time, day or night. So pop us an email and start having a conversation with us.